Today, we're diving into a fascinating and very important topic, mild autism in adults. But before we get started, let me ask you something. Do you have a friend who is a bit different? Maybe they are very shy, or sometimes too honest, even seeming rude. Perhaps they get overwhelmed in noisy environments or feel very anxious in social situations and struggle to make friends. If you do, or if any of this sounds familiar to you, they might be autistic. Autism is a topic that's discussed a great deal online, but what exactly is autism? What are the signs? Could you or someone close to you be autistic? These are the questions we're going to explore in today's video. We'll talk about 10 signs of mild autism in adults, and at the end, we'll take a quick test to see if you might identify with the autism spectrum. So if you're curious about autism, its signs, and whether it might apply to you or someone you know, you're in the right place. Let's dive in and uncover the nuances of mild autism together. First, let's quickly define what autism is. Autism, or autism spectrum disorder, ASD, is a neurological condition that affects communication, social interaction, and behavior. Imagine you're at a party where everyone is speaking a language you don't quite understand. You can catch some words and phrases, but often you miss the subtle jokes or the tone behind what people are saying. This can make you feel left out or anxious, right? Autism can feel like that. It's not about not understanding the words, but about missing the social cues and nuances that come naturally to others. Did you know that the prevalence of autism has increased dramatically over the years? In the 1970s, only 1 in 10,000 people were diagnosed with autism. By 1995, it was 1 in 1,000, and in 2002, it reached 1 in 50. Today, the statistic is about 1 in 54. This increase is partly because we've gotten better at recognizing and diagnosing autism, even in milder forms. People who reached adulthood without a diagnosis often have milder forms of autism. They might have been labeled as weird or shy, without knowing that autism was the root cause. This can lead to a lot of misunderstanding and misdiagnosis. In this video, we'll explore 10 common characteristics of mild autism in adults. Let's get started. Characteristic 10. Hypersensitivity to sounds, smells, and textures. Imagine you're in a crowded coffee shop, trying to have a conversation, but all you can focus on is the constant hum of the espresso machine, the scent of various perfumes, and the feel of your itchy sweater tag. This overwhelming sensitivity can be exhausting. People with autism often experience this heightened awareness, making everyday environments challenging. They might feel overwhelmed, anxious, or even physically uncomfortable in these situations. Have you noticed someone who gets easily overwhelmed by seemingly minor sensory details? For instance, they might even avoid certain places because the sensory input is too much to handle. Characteristic 9. Difficulty making eye contact. Think about a time when you felt particularly nervous, perhaps during a job interview, and found it hard to maintain eye contact. For many with autism, this discomfort is a daily experience. Eye contact can feel intrusive or even painful, making interactions more stressful. They might feel exposed, anxious, or even physically uncomfortable. This avoidance is often misunderstood as disinterest or dishonesty. Have you noticed someone who seems to avoid eye contact and wondered if it was due to shyness or something more? They might even use coping strategies like looking at a person's mouth instead. Characteristic 8. Focus on details rather than the whole. Picture yourself reading a book where every typo and grammatical error stands out, distracting you from the story. For someone with autism, this can happen in all aspects of life. They might notice the pattern of tiles on the floor but miss the overall layout of the room. This detailed focus can be both a strength and a challenge. They might feel frustrated or misunderstood when others don't see the importance of these details. Have you ever known someone who gets so caught up in the details that they miss the bigger picture? Or perhaps they excel in tasks requiring precision but struggle with broader concepts. Characteristic 7. Attachment to routines. Imagine having a set morning routine that you follow religiously. Now, think about how disoriented you would feel if you couldn't have your usual breakfast or had to take a different route to work. For people with autism, routines provide a sense of stability and predictability. When disrupted, it can cause significant anxiety and distress. They might feel lost, anxious, or out of control. Do you know someone who gets very upset when their routine is interrupted, perhaps reacting more strongly than you might expect? This need for routine can make even minor changes seem like insurmountable challenges. Characteristic 6. Difficulty reading between the lines. Have you ever taken a sarcastic comment at face value and felt embarrassed when you realized the speaker was joking? For people with autism, this literal interpretation is common. They might struggle to understand nonverbal cues and hidden meanings, leading to frequent misunderstandings. This can make them feel confused, frustrated, or socially isolated. Imagine how confusing it must be to navigate conversations without catching the subtle hints others take for granted. Have you met someone who often misses these social nuances and takes things literally? This can make social interactions feel like a minefield of potential misunderstandings. Characteristic 5. Difficulty understanding others' intentions. Imagine someone promises to help you with a project, but you later find out they never intended to. This kind of deceit can be puzzling for someone with autism, who often takes people at their word. They might find it hard to read between the lines and understand hidden motives, which can lead to feelings of betrayal and confusion. They might feel hurt, naive, or constantly on edge. Have you encountered someone who tends to believe everything they're told, sometimes to their detriment? This difficulty can make them particularly vulnerable to scams and manipulation. Characteristic 4. Difficulty perceiving emotions from facial expressions. Picture a close friend looking upset, but not saying anything. Most people can pick up on this and offer comfort. However, for someone with autism, recognizing these nonverbal cues can be challenging. They might not notice a frown or a sad look, making it hard to respond appropriately. This difficulty can make them feel disconnected, misunderstood, or guilty for missing these cues. Have you ever met someone who needs explicit statements of emotion to understand how others are feeling? They might often ask direct questions to clarify someone's emotional state. Characteristic 3. Being very antisocial. Imagine being in a crowded room where the noise and activity are overwhelming, making you feel like you need to escape. For people with autism, social situations can be incredibly draining. They might avoid parties or group activities, not because they don't want friends, but because these environments are too much to handle. They might feel anxious, exhausted, or overstimulated. Think about how difficult it would be to build relationships when you need to avoid social gatherings. Have you seen someone who prefers solitude over social interaction due to such overwhelm? They might also experience a strong need to recharge after social interactions. Characteristic 2. Hyperfocus on specific interests. Let's imagine a person being so absorbed in a hobby that hours pass by without you noticing. For someone with autism, this intense focus can lead to exceptional skills and knowledge in their area of interest, like technology or science. However, it can also mean neglecting other important aspects of life. They might feel a deep sense of fulfillment when engaged in their interests, but also struggle with balancing other responsibilities. Their passion is admirable, but it can sometimes be all-consuming. Have you met someone who can talk endlessly about their favorite topic, showcasing deep expertise? This hyperfocus can sometimes make it hard to shift attention to different tasks. Characteristic 1. High level of sincerity. Picture a child bluntly telling a stranger that their clothes are ugly. This kind of unfiltered honesty is common in people with autism, who may struggle with social norms about what's appropriate to say. Their sincerity can be refreshing, but also socially awkward. They might feel embarrassed, confused, or frustrated when their honesty leads to negative reactions. Imagine navigating a world where your straightforwardness is often misunderstood. Have you encountered someone who speaks their mind so directly that it catches you off guard? This honesty can sometimes result in conflicts, especially in more formal or sensitive settings. Remember, not everyone with these traits is autistic. It depends on the number and intensity of these characteristics and how they impact daily life. A definitive diagnosis should always be made by a specialist. Now, let's take a quick test to see if you might identify with the autism spectrum. This is the AQ-10, a shorter version of a validated autism test. Grab a paper and pen and divide your paper into 4 columns. Completely agree, partially disagree, and completely disagree. Please feel free to pause the video so you can really take your time to answer. Are you ready? Let's do it. Question 1. I often notice sounds that other people do not perceive. For example, you might always hear the faint buzz of the lights in your office that no one else seems to notice. Question 2. I usually focus more on the whole picture rather than on small details. Think about whether you see the overall story in a movie or if you get caught up noticing the tiny details in the background. Question 3. I find it easy to do more than one thing at a time. For instance, can you comfortably listen to a podcast while cooking dinner, or does one task always distract you from the other? Question 4. If I am interrupted, I can easily return to what I was doing. Imagine you are writing an email and the phone rings. Do you find it easy to pick up where you left off, or do you have to start over? Question 5. I find it easy to read between the lines when someone is talking to me. For example, when a friend says, "I guess I'm okay," do you immediately understand they might actually be upset? Question 6. I know when I am boring someone with my conversation. Picture yourself talking about a topic you love. Can you tell if the other person is losing interest or getting bored? Question 7. When I read a story, I have difficulty predicting the intentions of the characters. For example, can you tell if a character is about to betray their friend, or do these plot twists always surprise you? Question 8. I like to collect information about categories of things, such as cars or plants. Do you find yourself deeply engrossed in learning everything about a particular topic, like memorizing all car models from a specific brand? Question 9. I find it easy to discover what people think or feel just by looking at their face. Imagine trying to tell if a colleague is stressed just by looking at their expression. Is this something you find straightforward or challenging? Finally, question 10. I find it difficult to understand people's intentions. For example, do you often feel puzzled by why someone did something, like wondering why a coworker was overly friendly? To score your test, for questions 1, 7, 8, and 10, if you fully or partially agree, it may indicate autism. For the other questions, if you fully or partially disagree, it may indicate signs of autism. If you score 6 or more points, it could justify a more in-depth investigation. But remember, scoring in this test is just a guide and does not mean you have autism, so don't be alarmed. This test is just a starting point. If you feel like you want to explore the possibility of autism, then please consider seeing a specialist for a thorough evaluation. Understanding these traits can help us support our friends, family, and even ourselves better. If you liked this video, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon for more health tips. Share this knowledge with as many people as possible, and leave a comment below if you have any questions or experiences you'd like to share. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.